Hello, everybody. So today I want to cover 8 stocks that I consider to be undervalued as well as very attractive from a rule of 40 standpoint, knowing that these stocks are all stock that I'm adding to except PinDuoDuo, which is a stock that I've not added to or that I've not purchased yet, but I am strongly considering purchasing it even though it's a Chinese company, and we'll get to why in the second. If you're new to the channel, really briefly, how do I invest on this channel? Well, my style of investing is about adoption. I invest in companies whose products are not widely, massively adopted yet. And my goal is to follow this adoption curve where I buy a stock at the early signs of product adoption, and hopefully 10 to 15 years later, I get out of this stock once the product is so mainstream that everybody uses it and everybody has adopted it, and I'm out unless that company releases a new product or a new service that continues this S-curve. That's my style of investing. And really briefly, there's 2 more things that I use to assess whether I find a stock attractive or not. The first one is enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth. And this is a modification of the Peter Lynch's PEG ratio, where I use gross profit instead of earnings growth, because gross profit, I believe, is a better indication of the economic value creation of a business. You know, it's the age-old question of accounting, which is marketing an expense, is marketing an investment? In the 21st century, I consider marketing, for example, or R&D to be an investment and not an expense. If it's an investment, really, it's a gift of the accounting world that they classify it this way. But in my view, it's an investment. That's the whole Amazon story, for example. Anyways, the EV over GP over revenue growth. The question is, how much am I paying for each 1 percentage point of future revenue growth? That's the cost of that future revenue growth. And that's a metric that is highly dependent on revenue growth itself, how quickly the firm is growing. All of these stocks are growing at more than 30%, with some of them as high as nearly 80%, almost for Transmedics. Lastly, what I use is rule of 40. So rule of 40 is a form of analysis that I've added recently to my spreadsheets. What this tells you is it uses the venture capitalist criteria of looking at both the economic profitability of the business and adding that up to the revenue growth, and both should be at 40 or more. So if you add how much money the business makes, which I use EBITDA margin as a proxy for that. Adjusted EBITDA margin I use as a proxy for cash flow, as a proxy for economic value creation. So I take that number and I add it to revenue growth, and then what do I get? I get a number which hopefully adds up to more than 40. I mean, and if it's more than 40, it's attractive. It's what VCs consider attractive, and it's another indication that the stock, the company underlying the stock, really is not broken, really has a lot of potential, or at least that's the way I invest. So let me go through each stock. So the first stock I go through is MercadoLibre. MercadoLibre is mostly an e-commerce company in Brazil, in Mexico, in Argentina. They also have a fintech payment division that helps with a lot of micro businesses with Mercado Pago is the name of the system. So a little bit of a fintech, a whole lot of sales, online sales, delivery, kind of the Amazon of Latin America, without the cloud and with a fintech division. MercadoLibre, in my view, has won in this region of the world. In fact, if you go there, I was recently in Mexico. If you go to Mexico, you'll see MercadoLibre quite used quite a bit. You see the trucks, and you also see the payment terminals over there. This is a company that's predicted to grow at 30%. Revenue growth is still high. I mean, e-commerce is a megatrend everywhere, but it is bigger of a megatrend in countries like Mexico and Argentina. We are quite further ahead in, say, the West as far as e-commerce goes. E-commerce there is still a few years back, and it's still a major boom. And the stock is cheap at an enterprise value over a gross profit over revenue growth of a 0.32. The stock is cheap, knowing that generally I consider anything under 0.5 to be cheap. You'll note that PEG ratio for Peter Lynch, which uses something further down in the income statement, right? It uses earnings. Peter Lynch considers his ratio to be good if you get under a 1. Well, I go higher in the income statement. I use gross profit. So for me, the ratio, I consider a stock to be good at under 0.5. Anything under 0.5 is something good, hopefully much lower than this. Now, let me talk about the only stock in there that I don't own, but it's tempting. This one is very tempting, and it's PinDuoDuo. So PinDuoDuo is a Chinese company, but unlike Alibaba, it is growing very fast at 57% predicted revenue growth in the future. PinDuoDuo in Chinese, I think loosely means friends, fun, shop, or shop, fun, friends. It's the idea of making shopping fun. And in the US and in Europe, you will know PinDuoDuo perhaps as TEMU, which is the version of their app that is doing so well in the West and seems to have a little more durability than, say, a Wish. If you remember Wish back in 2018, 2019, not as durable. It seems like TEMU is doing well. TEMU belongs to PinDuoDuo. PinDuoDuo being a giant in China at this valuation. Knowing that China has a few tailwinds right now, including the monetary printing that is about to restart over there. Anyways, the stock is very cheap at an enterprise value over gross profit over revenue of 0.11. It is very cheap, and it is actually cheaper than HIMS, and it is actually cheaper than all the stocks that I cover today. Gross margin is very good at 62% for an e-commerce business where you still have a lot of logistics involved. The EBITDA margin is there at 26%. This business is the most profitable out of all of those I cover today. And this is why it achieves a whopping rule of 40 of 83. So twice the rule of 40. Chinese stocks are very cheap right now. I have a hard time understanding it. I was talking in the comment section with someone about Luckin Coffee, which might be a stock that I might want to take a look at. Haven't pulled the trigger yet on PinDuoDuo. I don't own Chinese stocks at the moment, and so this is kind of, if you're going to own a Chinese stock, you got to get back into this discussion. If you're going to buy a Chinese stock. And so PinDuoDuo, nonetheless, very cheap in my view. Moving on to a channel favorite, right? HIMS is a channel favorite. It's doubled so quick, this one. I mean, now it's at $20. I feel so bad because I was buying it at 6, 7, and I made a lot of the buys in the 9 to 11 range. So it's up 100%. Then you get into a psychology, which is, it's still the second cheapest stock that I present to you today at the 0.12. It's still dirt cheap. The business has changed, right? It's got weight loss coming. Weight loss is likely going to be huge for HIMS. The business has changed. This is a better business now that has grown much more. That definitely, in my view, warrants a higher valuation. But you still remember putting an order at $6 and it's at 20. And so for me, it usually takes me a few months to get over that psychological hurdle. And get used to the new stock price of HIMS because it's run so fast. Nonetheless, inexpensive company, still predicted to grow at 43%. HIMS, of course, is the company that has nailed digital doctors, the company that has nailed digital pharmacy. You're investing in HIMS. When you're investing in HIMS, you make a bet on the future of digital doctors, e-doctors, remote visits, coupled with the future of remote pharmacy, digital pharmacy through the mail. And with HIMS, you get that in this package of a very agile company because this company operates entirely outside of the insurance system, which allows it to move very fast, which allows HIMS to cut through all of the administrative red tape, all of the issues of pricing that come associated with traditional health insurance, which is why oftentimes HIMS, I refer to it as cheaper than copays. If it's cheaper than your copays, then why would you want to use your insurance? The average HIMS treatment is about $50 a month for medium type, minor to medium type conditions, right? Like ED, like weight loss. They don't deal with things more advanced, right? They deal with earlier on health issues that are still treatable through pharmaceuticals and pharmacy. That's what HIMS does. The rule of 40 for HIMS HIMS is excellent at a 52%. That their EBITDA margin keeps growing quarter to quarter. And this is a company that has guided over the long term for a 25% EBITDA margin, by the way. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a stock like HIMS as their EBITDA margin evolves up. I wouldn't be surprised to see it trend towards a rule of 40, closer to 80, which would be outstanding. Moving on to Oddity. Oddity was targeted by a short report recently. Many of you have asked me about it in the comment section. I don't cover short reports. I don't read them. I've had so many of my stocks attacked with it. I remember Square. That was completely. They were having some sort of anti-rap, and they used the fact that Square was using rap music to criticize. I just don't read them. I don't put any credit on them because I know you're biased, right? I know you're very biased when you have a short report, because obviously you're going to have a position before releasing the report, and then the stock goes down and you benefit because you have a short position before releasing the report. So you write your thesis when you write a short report. You write it thinking it's already going to be bad and only looking for the bad. So I don't read them. But if you have a fair criticism of a company like Odd in the comment section, I can reply to it. Odd. What does Odd do? Odd, well, it's two brands. It's Il Makiage and it's Spoiled Child. They cater to mostly women, like 95% women. I'm sure their dermatology may have a few men, but it's mostly women they cater to, because the main product is a foundation. So a foundation is this makeup that one puts on their skin, and there's a lot of issues for women finding the right foundation for their skin, because historically the legacy player, the L'Oreals of the world, they've used numbers or letters, and they have like 10 skin tones that you can pick from, or 20, while in reality there's thousands and thousands of possible different skin tones. So how does Odd work? Well, they have this Il Makiage brand with an app. You scan your face, you answer questions, and then the company makes a custom foundation that's exactly the color of your skin. And what they find is that once a woman has found the right foundation, she's going to keep buying the product because it is the right color. Once you find the right stuff, you stick with it. So business very similar to HIMS, but in the cosmetics world. So you don't have the consultation, which right there adds to the profitability, right? Because that EBITDA margin for Oddity is much higher than say for HIMS, and the revenue growth, frankly, for Oddity is outstanding, if you ask me, at 33%, knowing that they have two more brands coming that they want to launch. So that revenue growth at 33%, in my view, is very high. For product cosmetics, just like a pharmaceuticals, it's very profitable product at 72%, and that's why when I look at the valuation of Oddity, it's in line with the HIMS, right? A little more expensive, but barely, and their rule of 40 is a little higher. So they make a little more money now, but they have a little less growth now. HIMS makes a little more money in the future with the growth, but they make a little less money now because they got to pay for these consults, right? For HIMS, it includes your consultation with physician. You don't have to do that with cosmetics. I own Odd. I'm adding to Odd regularly, and I like the stock very much. Moving on to SoFi. SoFi has been in this valley of despair. I mean, the stock is trading at 680, 650, 720, 730. It's been stuck in this $7 price. I mean, the joke on Twitter, if you follow SoFi, the joke on Twitter is that the stock is essentially a stable coin right now because it's only trading at $7. And I've been adding regularly. I think it's very cheap. I think this is a company that is growing now only at 22%. Why? Because it's mostly the tech division that's growing, and they're being very prudent with their loans. Now remember, a financial services company, a bank, in the case of SoFi, that makes loan, in theory, a bank can grow as fast as it wants. It's just a matter of how much risk you want to get in the money that you lend. and they've decided to take a conservative approach right now, and so that's why they're predicted to grow by analysts at only 22%. But the gross margin is excellent at 82%, and they're focusing on their profitability. So they are profitable and an EBITDA margin of 23%. So this handsomely gets them into above a rule of 40 at a rule of 45, which is very good. And the stock is, not the cheapest in the spreadsheet, but it's still in the top tier cheapest at a 0.16. So how much am I paying for that growth for SoFi? I'm paying a 0.16 per 1% of growth. So SoFi, if you were to phrase it like that, SoFi would be about 50% more expensive than a PinDuoDuo on a forward growth basis, but you don't have the China risk, for example. So I like SoFi very much. A stock that I've added to recently, and I've sold my PayPal, by the way, partially to buy this stock, is Shift4. Shift4, I find the stock very cheap. I don't understand why it is so cheap, because it's in a space, the payments space, that typically warrants higher valuation. So right off the bat, just because of that, you have a valuation reset potential. You have multiple expansion potential. But of course, that's not my style of investing. This is not how I invest. I invest in a company that has a greater odds of success over the long run. What's interesting for Shift4 is that they do a lot of hospitality. They do a lot of payments for restaurants. They're a payment terminal, right? They're a payment terminal company, like a Square, like a Toast. But they do a top-down approach where they go see large groups, and then they're going down the scale, the size of scale. It's very different from, say, how a Toast or how a Square has grown, where they do a bottom-up approach, where they start selling the payment terminals to small businesses, and eventually they get to the bigger businesses. Shift4 has an opposite business model, where they start selling the payment system to bigger organizations, and they're going down the value chain. That's why Shift4 is very big in stadiums and in large hotel chains. These payment terminals are everywhere. They also famously are the payment processor for Starlink, and for a lot of the Musk companies, they are their payment processor of choice. CEO is very inspirational. CEO started the company very, very, very young. Isaac Mann for Shift4 started the company very, very young. And the CEO is also an astronaut, believe it or not, and flew one of the Elon Musk missions. So you have that Elon Musk connection in Shift4 that is also very interesting in my view, and that could make the stock be more valuable. Definitely a special leadership. The stock is down over the past 6 months now. Don't be fooled. That stock is down not because of a performance. That stock is down because there was an acquisition that was supposed to go through that didn't go through. They were putting themselves up for sale. They didn't get the price they wanted, so now they're not for sale anymore. And who knows whether they'll be for sale again in 5 years. But the stock is undervalued right now, and they're thinking about buying back the stock, by the way. So if you look at the EV, enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, i.e. how much am I paying for that growth? I'm paying a 0.25, which is cheap. Top quarter cheap, and then the EBITDA margin is also high at 13%. This company is profitable. So that gives me a rule of 40 or 46, which is very good in my view. Now let me move on to a stock that I love very much, and a product that I find very compelling on many aspects. It's Celsius Holdings. So Celsius is a beverage company, energy beverage company. It is a beverage company that is quote unquote for everyone. And you see that beverage company being drank as much by women and men, as much by old and young, healthy and unhealthy. Everybody seems to drink it in the US. It is just about everywhere. They have this marketing that is all inclusive. This is not something you could say about a Red Bull or Monster, for example, which is really more of a male-oriented, extreme sports type marketing, which really limits the appeal of the product. I find that the sales growth for Celsius is absolutely outstanding, predicted to grow at 54%. Again, their partnership with Pepsi is really doing well. And they are profitable, 22% EBITDA margin, so high profitability. This is just liquid. You're selling liquid with 200 milligrams of caffeine, so people keep buying day after day. The caffeine is, this age-old business where you keep going back to it. And the enterprise value over gross profit or revenue growth is the highest in my spreadsheet today at a 0.46, but still cheap because as I said at the beginning of the video, if it's under 0.5, it's still cheap. I still find it cheap. Not as cheap as it once was. If the stock was trading in the $60-ish, that'd be a much better add point and a much better position. But it dropped. It dropped decently over the past 2 weeks, and I've been happy about that, and I've been adding to it. And I'll conclude with Transmedics, which is the high flyer of this spreadsheet, which is a stock that I initially didn't want to buy. Then I did 180 because I looked at the numbers and was like, okay, I'm going to buy it. Okay, I need to understand this business. Transmedic is a stock for organ transplant. They deal with the very sad procedure of sometimes you have an accident and sometimes somebody passes away, but the organs are still good. And you have an organ donation system. And so they deal with the transportation and the preservation of the organs between, unfortunately, the person that passed away and the person that is waiting, right? The donor and the people that are in dire needs of these organs. And they have a 0-to-1 product in two main ways. The first way of a 0-to-1 product is that in the past, organs, when they were being transferred from the donor to the patient, they were put on dry ice, and they would have to fly in a private jet to get to the hospital, which is sometimes a patient that's compatible. Sometimes is going to be, hundreds, thousands of miles away. Sometimes, and so that's one issue that it solves. It created this organ care system, the OCS, where you plug in the organ in this. The only way I can call it is an artificial womb. It plugs it in an artificial womb. You feed it blood and you keep it alive for multiple days. And then you can just transfer it back into the patient. That's one part of the revolution of Transmedics, 0-to-1 move. The second one is that they own an airline. They're a medical transplant company that owns its own airline, and I've never seen this in the airline business. I mean, aside from CEOs owning their private jets, kind of a joke, but I've never seen it in the healthcare business. Seeing someone own an airline, they own their airline. Why do they own their airline? Because in the old system of organ transplant, you had to find a private jet. There's about 30% of the days out of the year where you can't find a private jet for hire. Why can't you find those? Because, for example, if you have a concert or a sporting event, all of the private jets will be booked on that day. And so they own jets that are fully dedicated to organ transplant and do just organ transplant. And so they're able to really execute a donation, an organ donation, at any time of the year, any time of the day. They're able to execute, and you end up with having way less organs wasted. And this is, from that standpoint, this is very ethical because you're wasting way less. So this company has really everything to like for me, except, maybe the valuation is a little high at the 0.31, or at least if you look at a price to sales basis, right, EV over sales, you see a 15. Seems a little high, but when you adjust that for growth, you realize, well, actually, wait 14, 15 months, the valuation will be back at 7, right? And wait 2 years, you might get to a valuation to a 5 if it keeps growing this fast. How much am I paying for that growth? I'm paying a 0.31. So I'm paying up for growth, but the growth is less expensive than, say, in a Celsius. EBITDA margin is 9%. Again, that is slated to improve. And because of the outstanding revenue growth numbers of Transmedics, I am getting a rule of 40 for Transmedics of 87, which is just outstanding. So to conclude this video, all of these stocks I like. I own all of them except PinDuoDuo, but I might pull the trigger on PinDuoDuo. And the numbers are outstanding. The average is in the top 25% cheapest at 0.24. That's my average of the cost. How much am I paying for that growth? And the average of the rule of 40 is a rule of 61, which is fairly outstanding. I like those stocks very much, and I hope you enjoy this video. Still, I'm very busy right now. Can't get back on my former schedule of the good old days when I was making a video a day. So busy, can't do that right now, but I hope to have more videos coming over the next few weeks. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your support for the channel. This is no investment advice. This is no financial advice. This is just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.